Yeah, so that was fun. But now, yes, we get to talk about the serious stuff, UFOs. So yes, as Mitch said, I'm president of the New York City Skeptics. So yeah, but what I'm going to talk about today has nothing to do with us here in New York, necessarily. This is coming from, based on an article I wrote for the website of Skeptical Inquirer. So it's kind of loosely constructed, and you'll see how things go as we move along. This is from the famous Plan 9 Matter Space by Ed Wood. How many people were into weird stuff when they were young? Yeah, that's I mean, I was too. You know, I was really into ghosts as a kid. I blamed Ghostbusters. But that moved into UFOs at some point because that's more scientific, right? I mean, that's like, it's from science fiction. Aliens are from science fiction. That is science right in the name. So I was into UFOs for a long time. I didn't realize how so many people who had weird beliefs transferred into skepticism and still kind of kept an interest in things like this. So that's pretty cool. But so I was a teenager in the 90s when I kind of started shifting gears from one side to the other. And back then, you know, there were a lot of books about the classics. This is the McMinnville, Oregon flying saucer picture. Trindade in Brazil, that's probably too hard to see right now. And back in the 90s, we got the black triangles. Anybody remember the black triangles in Belgium? And of course, Gulf Breeze in Florida. This was so famous. This ended up being a pretty clumsy hoax. I think we just kind of figured out where this one came from recently. But at the same time, you know, these were kind of impressive things. It's like, wow, that really looks like it could be something. And of course we had Roswell. That was the big thing in the 90s. A lot of people don't realize people weren't talking about Roswell for 70 years, from 1947. It didn't really come back until the 80s. People started saying, hey, remember that weird thing? And of course, this is pictures from the original newspaper article. Anybody watch Alien Autopsy on Fox when it aired? I know I did.
Commander Riker was it.
That's right. So, yeah, so I was really into it in the 90s, and I was still interested in it, even when I became more skeptical, because it's just kind of weird and fun. But then I went to college, and I kind of got interested in other things, as you might imagine. And, but recently I kind of poked my head back in and say, okay, where are things now some, Jesus, 20 years later almost? And what do I find? We're still talking about goddamn Roswell. Are you serious? I mean, in the 90s, the government came out and said it's Project Mogul. Maybe that's just a conspiracy, but it kind of makes sense. You can look at the records. This was kind of a weather balloon array that monitored Soviet nuclear tests. You could measure the amount of radiation in the air or something like that. And then what is this? This is like nouveau alien autopsy. This is called, everybody hear the Roswell slides? That was a big thing a few years ago, apparently, where people were like, oh, this is a mummy of one of the beings from the Roswell crash. Well, no, it turns out if you kind of work the camera artifacts right, and you zoom in closely enough, you can read this, and it's actually from like a South American mummy or something like that. And it's like, come on guys, it's the 21st century. Is this really the best that ufology can do? Like, why does anybody still bother with this? Like, with all the camera technology, with all the surveillance we're under constantly from our own people and from others, you'd think we'd be getting closer to either finding something, if there's something really there to find, or being able to concretely say, the paucity of evidence is now overwhelming. We kind of have to say, with all our technology and all our data, if we're not finding anything, there may not be anything there. So, these were the thoughts that I was having. And so I went to 3 of the remaining last of the old guard of sort of skeptical ufology. This is Robert Schaefer here on the left. He's a hardcore skeptic. He's had his psychic vibrations or notes of a fringe one, whatever his column is in Skeptical Inquirer for years and years, and his Bad UFOs blog site. This is Chris Rakowski over here on the right. I would consider him and this gentleman, who I'll get to, they give the impression that they want to believe there's something there, but they acknowledge that there's really no good evidence. Chris actually works for the Canadian UFO organization, and this is Kurt Collins here, who concentrates a lot on the old cases. He really drills down onto, the old favorites, and tries to figure out if there's anything new there to talk about. And he says, I'm actually going to get closer so I can kind of see my notes, sorry. And Kurt Collins says he kind of agreed with my assessment that there really weren't many new compelling cases for a long time. Things kind of petered out after the 90s, it seemed like. So this is, anybody guess what this one is? Anybody pay attention to UFOs at all? This is from the USS Nimitz encounter in 2004. Everybody I talked to kind of brought this one up. And Robert, so I asked, are there any good recent cases? And Robert Schaefer brought this one up, and he's like, well, it's 2004, I guess that's recent. Apparently that's what counts for recent now. This was you've probably heard about this one a lot. It's just one of the Navy videos. And it's like, well, okay, we've seen Navy videos before. We've seen pilot videos before. This is nothing new. And there's always some problem with the provenance. We don't know where it came from. We don't get the whole video. Your question?
Just a comment. I would say in reference to skepticism, one of the key aspects of skeptical and scientific style thinking is admitting to the fact that there are many basic questions that no one knows the answer to. And admitting to ignorance is one of the key aspects of what you're referring to as ufology. There are just many situations where no one knows for sure what it was that somebody saw in the sky somewhere.
That's true. But, actually, you know what, I kind of go back to that a little bit at the end, so let me hold off on that for a second. But this photo down here is from, what is it? Excuse me, sorry, Stephenville, Texas, in 2008. It was kind of a classic lights in the sky sort of thing. Like 40 people or so saw it, but this photo isn't even real. Somehow nobody was able to photograph it, nobody tried or bothered. And this is 2008, this is only 11 years ago. It's not like, phones on cameras were that rare. They actually had to digitally put these in to an article that I read just so there was something to go with it. And even Kurt Collins said, what we're getting now is really low-grade stuff. And this is, who knows what this is?
That's Santa Fe.
What were the Phoenix Lights?
The Phoenix Lights were most likely military flares.
What year?
Sometime in the 90s. Yeah. Anybody know who this is?
That's
Yeah, J. Allen Hynek, of course, the leader of, the scientific advisor to the famous government Project Blue Book, Air Force project that was looking into UFOs. He died in 1986. Obviously, since we've been doing this since the 70s, there's going to be some turnover. And he was kind of, I guess, the scientist's UFO believer, if you want to say it that way. I think he was more skeptical when he started out, but he got a little more convinced as he worked with it. Chris Rukowski said he was the person who spoke for ufology. Robert Schaefer said he was one of the least worst. But then when he died in 1986, we kind of got Stanton Friedman took his place. The flying saucer physicist is what they called him. He didn't actually have a PhD, but he had a master's degree in nuclear physics, I think, which is something. And I guess one of his points was that Chris Rukowski said he'd go on Larry King and basically sounded like he knew what he was talking about. But Stanton Friedman died this year in May. So who steps up to be the reasonable public face of ufology now? Anybody know? Michio Kaku? Well, it might be. Or is it this guy? This is Tom DeLonge, formerly of Blink-182, the pop punk band. He is kind of the face of ufology now, believe it or not. he has, he started this group called To the Stars Academy, and you know what, rather than talk about it, it's better if you just hear it from himself.
How old is he?
I don't know how old he is now, but I mean...
What's his age again?
What's his age again?
Testimonies of all the people on these tapes here. And all the people on those tapes comprise, like, there's 136 hours of interviews of people testifying about their jobs that dealt with aliens in the military. My rad, like, books on the secret architecture of our nation's capital. The whole thing's set up, it's all creepy. It's weird. I have the JFK assassination book. The CIA and the mob killed one of the best presidents of all time. I have it in this book. It's crazy.
Can you believe it?
I know so.
How do you
Evidence is there, dude.
Well, you get the idea. So, Robert Schaefer called that video, "Dude, Where's My Saucer?" But somehow, I mean, apparently it's working because he got this show on the History Channel this summer called Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation. And what the hell did they talk about? More Nimitz. There was an airport sighting again like 10, 15 years ago. Somehow, this is all they have to talk about anymore, and yet it keeps going on. And Tom DeLonge just signed a contract with the military. Okay? No, I swear to God. There, you can go to the Army website and see. For like novel materials investigation. Apparently he's been collecting all these supposed pieces of wreckage, not even recent ones, just from like, you know, cases decades old. And the military came out and they told Motherboard on Vice, they said, look, this is a very low risk venture for us. If he happens to have something that is weird or novel or we can use, fine, whatever. But still, it's kind of disheartening, isn't it? And again, let's go back to the elephant in the room. You know, cameras and technology. This is where you are right now. This is a picture taken from space of where you are right now. Here's a picture from Google Street Maps. That's pretty good. And, you know, I understand that, you know, there aren't a lot of street-level UFOs, but, you know, it's just different. It's fine. But at the same time, you think with all of this going on all the time, all around us, somebody would have caught something by now. And in fact, this is from last year, there was an article in The Guardian that kind of spread everywhere. Despite all this technology we have, despite the ubiquitous surveillance, UFO sightings are going down worldwide. The decline started around 2014 when reports were at a peak. It's introduced drastically to 55% of that year's combined total. Many UFO groups have folded, and numerous previously classified government documents have been disclosed. So what is going on here? And the other weird thing is that, again, as camera resolution and all my stuff gets better, all of our old favorites are going away. This is the triangles, the saucers. I honestly don't remember what that was supposed to be. With the washed up from the sun. Oh yeah, we don't really get physical trace cases anymore. Like I said, all those old artifacts, they're from cases decades old. This is the burn patch in Socorro, New Mexico, the craft that supposedly landed in front of the cop. You don't see any more stuff like this. What we do get is just simple dots in the sky. Really? That's the best we can do? Especially when there's all kinds of artifacts in digital cameras. That means they're not really supposed to be used to image things that are very far away, and you can't really tell what planes and birds and faraway things are. I mean, is this the best that they've got, really? And it's going to get worse, too, because I guess with drones we can prove that Santa's real.
Nora.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've all seen like the drone shows at Super Bowl halftimes and whatever like this. Look at all the amazing things we can do with drones, and there's just going to be more and more drones. Could we be going the opposite way? Could it be getting harder to tell if there's something there when there's all this other noise flying around in the sky? And it gets even worse when you consider the problem of deepfakes. Has everybody seen this?
Oh.
Is this Full House where everyone has the face of, what's his name? Nick Offerman? Full House of mustaches. Yeah. Isn't this crazy? Now, obviously, not everyone has access to this technology yet, but it's coming. You can basically make anything you want look real now. How do you tell what's real and what's not?
Probably not good.
I don't know, look at that, look at that. That's the best part right there. So, let me go back, I'll just set this up a little bit more. So, but kind of in contrast to what that Guardian article said, Chris Rakowski told me that in Canada, at least, UFO sightings have been going up. But the question is, again, it's all those point sources. Is it just drones? Is it satellites? You got the question, if sightings are going down, is that just because people assume they're drones or satellites and just don't report anything anymore? Because they're like, well, I don't know what it is, but there's a million friggin' things in the sky, who knows what it is? Let's see what this quote says. Oh yeah, and the other thing is that when I started thinking about this and went to these gentlemen to talk to them first, I forgot one of the cardinal rules of pseudoscience. You know, those rules about science about how to do things. One of the cardinal rules of pseudoscience, whether they want to believe it or not, is that there's no progress phase. So my stupid idea that, there's got to be a make it or break it point for ufology where either we find something or we don't, that was one of the dumbest things I've ever thought. Because in 70 years, there's probably been a lot of those points, and it's never happened, and it's probably never going to happen if we're honest with ourselves. But then you come into the current political climate and current social climate where there really is no expertise anymore. People don't trust experts anymore. Opinions are as valid as facts. And this is a great quote from Chris. What I believe is as valid as what you believe. He summarized a better meta-modernism philosophy. That seems to be the state of the world, and ufology is right in it. So, again, something I should have realized from the start, but I'm glad I finally came to my senses with their help, was that it doesn't matter how deafening the lack of evidence is. People are always going to have confirmation bias. They're always going to protect their tribe. They're always going to try to maintain their group identity. Who was here for the flat Earth discussion? Not here, but in Brooklyn. Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about mountains of disconfirming evidence, and they just held fast. So no, there is no end of ufology. We're just going to keep doing this. Same song, different singers, apparently forever. A lot of you know that I also, this is a nice comic book image of a UFO, a flying saucer, that I edit a science and skepticism section, as Michael said, for the website AIPT, entertainment, pop culture, all those kinds of things. This is a sampling of the kinds of stuff I published recently. I used an issue of X-Men to talk about the singularity. Right here we have the most accurate dinosaur toys ever created. They made raptors that were covered in feathers with realistic colors, depending on what environments they lived in. Book reviews, science stuff at New York Comic Con this year. One of the reasons I do this is to get out of the echo chamber and get to people who really need to see this kind of stuff. Pop culture is a great way to do that. I ask you to check it out if you want to contribute. I am a firm believer that everybody has something to say, so we can always use more contributors. We're doing best science stories of the year, best science stories of the decade. Star Wars month is this month. If anybody has any science Star Wars ideas, And February is always our big skepticism month, where I really, really load up skepticism as much as I can. Last year, in the 28 days of February, we had 23 different articles from 17 different authors. So you can be a part of that this coming February, if you so choose. If not, check it out and share it, if you would please. And that's what I got. Great.
I think the answer to your question about where are the ufologists, I think the majority of people, the general public now just thinks that it's true. So that's why the ufologists don't even have to put on shows anymore. Everybody in my job says, oh yeah, they're here, without even questioning it.
I think a lot of that comes from just distrust of authority. If the government tells me the sky is blue, I'm going to say it's purple. The government says we don't have anything. Of course, they must have something.
I think that people have grown up.
And it's just the ubiquity of shows. Everybody I talk to, all of them, just made sure I understood how much they hated ancient aliens. Like, yeah, okay, I get it. But like, that's the kind of thing that obfuscates quote unquote serious study. But I think it's also kind of a pop culture thing now. It's like, I don't know how many people actually believe it, but it's cool to talk about. I mean, remember the Storm Area 51 thing earlier this year? People just went and hung out, you know. I don't know how many of those people were actually serious about trying to break into the secure military facility. But it was just kind of it was almost like Burning Man or that stupid Fire Fest that fell apart or whatever, you know.
Wait, you're comparing Burning Man to Fire Festival?
Oh, it's a different Fire Festival was a scam.
Yes.
What's your personal view on the existence of intelligent life?
Please, Pastor Caleb Sharp. No, he asked me what's my personal view. Well, first, I want to make it perfectly clear that whether UFOs are alien spacecraft and whether alien life exists somewhere else in the universe are two completely different questions.
Agreed.
Me personally, I said to Caleb after the talk a couple months ago, I said, I think we kind of think the same way, and yet we come to opposite conclusions. It's like, I agree with him that we don't really have any data. We have a sample size of 1. You know, us in this room and everything else on this planet right now. And we're finding more planets and things, and it seems that planets are ubiquitous. They're kind of everywhere. Every star seems to have planets, which is mind-blowing. We kind of thought or hoped that, but now we're finding out that it's pretty much true. But also we're finding that there's a lot of weird planets out there. There don't seem to be a lot of systems like ours for whatever reason. Again, just what we're seeing. So, again, the data is so sparse, almost non-existent, again, just us, that I think it's premature to say, oh, there's so many stars, there's so many planets, there must be intelligent life out there somewhere. We literally have no idea what it takes. I mean, we don't even realize it, really understand how life starts. We don't know how it started here. To say it must be somewhere else, it has to be, the numbers are too big. Okay, maybe not, you know, and that's where usually skeptical people sort of abandon their skepticism a tiny bit because they want, just like, you know, the people who follow alternative medicine, just like the people who, you know, want to take homeopathy so they don't have to pay medical bills, they want to believe it, so they let their guard down just a little bit so that they can say, yes, of course it must be true.
You know, as a follow-up, one of the things that Caleb Sharp pointed out is that, you know, we've got the SETI group, and there's, you know, we're combing the heavens now looking for signals from space that might be, you know, from another civilization. But he said that when we send signals out, they start dispersing fairly quickly out in the interstellar space, so that even if there are signals coming out that they're radiating out from some other civilization, they'll be dispersed very quickly, and we won't ever get them anyway. So it seems at this point almost impossible that we find other civilizations.
Caleb Sharp, for those who weren't around, he was an astrobiologist from NYU who came to our monthly lecture series a couple months ago. Yeah, I mean, you would, if you're going to get a signal from somebody, it has to be directed. It had to be a deliberate attempt to communicate with somebody, because you got to point it somewhere. You got to make sure all the energy goes,
Right.
almost like a laser.
That's what the crop circle is.
Yeah, so, I mean, it would be awesome to find intelligent life, but at the same time, again, reading a little esoteric now, but me personally, I get a little annoyed with the life bias that we all have and say like, oh, if the universe, if we're the only life, then the universe is empty and it's a waste. Really, there's other cool stuff. Don't be such a biologist.
I was just going to say that I think, just judging from how many other planets and stars there are, that there does have to be other intelligent life out there. However, considering how far away all those other stars are and how many of them there are, the chances of our ever making contact with any of that other intelligent life or them making contact with us are really microscopic.
Yeah, in any kind of meaningful sense, yeah. One of the other things that Caleb Sharp said, to defend the other position a little bit, was that if you run like basically motion models of the galaxy, you'll see that for periods of time, some stars kind of cluster around each other and some kind of spread out. So it seems like if there were spacefaring civilizations, it would be in those clusters where it's easier to get around, and we might just be in some back part of the cosmos that isn't really near enough to anything else for anybody to bother coming.
But we're really kind of fortunate where we are in the galaxy, because we're not in a dense part of the galaxy. If you're around, every once in a while, a star has a supernova called a gamma ray burst, and it kills everything. If gamma ray burst went off in a nearby star, it would kill everything on the near side and the far side of the planet. And so these gamma ray bursts, when they happen, they cause a mass extinction of a whole region of a galaxy.
Well, I think
we're in a sparse part of the galaxy, so the gamma ray bursts have been far enough apart.
My understanding is that the gamma bursts actually come from the poles of a star, so they're kind of almost directed like a signal would be. So they're not. Yes, if you're in the line of fire, forget it. You're done. You're fried. It's like you said. It's like a supernova beam right in your face. But like I said, it has to be like right between the eyes.
Yeah. But if we were in the middle of the galaxy, these things would
be more likely. It would be much more likely
to form intelligent life.
Yeah, I always think that's like buying 1,000 lottery tickets, though. It's like one of those things, it's all very remote, so there's more opportunities, but still it's going to be pretty small.
Sure.
But maybe that's an
well,
idea.
I mean, it makes sense to say it that way, but again, when we literally have no idea why life starts to begin with, you're probably right. I just like to be conservative.
Oh, yeah. Well, to me, the most interesting thing would be if we find some traces of life, say, on Europa, or maybe oxygen based. I think it's the TESS mission now that is going to be able to do spectroscopy on planets' atmospheres. If you see some.
Yeah. So I mean, finding other life in the solar system would be. I mean, that would be my argument. My argument would be worthless at that point. If you can be sure that it isn't the same instance of life, like life didn't start on Europa and come here, or vice versa.
No, yeah, but for the probe, that's why we
You have to prove that.
But also say that I think it's the TESS mission that will be able to do spectroscopy on atmospheres of planets.
That is the Webb telescope, if that ever goes up, the James Webb Space
Telescope. I
Telescope.
thought it was actually the TESS one, but it's like the.
They're doing that with ground-based telescopes.
No, that's going to be a satellite. The James Webb is a satellite.
Really?
Yeah. But the thing is, even if you find oxygen in an atmosphere, it's a good idea, it's a good thought that there might be life there or something weird going on. It just tells you something weird is going on there. There might be a novel geologic process that we're not really aware of. So yes, we get us on the right track, but we're still a few steps
Well, yeah,
back.
it's basically it's going to be, I guess it's a good lead, but still, okay, back to your thing, if there's
So his time is basically up, so we will